Of course, fishing can be dangerous. I've lost friends. But I have to carry on anyway, because I have to feed my family.
The Great Sea Reef has changed a lot. When I started diving, everything was spectacular. The corals were much brighter than how it is now. And the fish were a lot more bigger than what we have now.
And there were more different species that villages were using. So now there is still fish.
There are a lot of passionate, idealistic people who act as advocates for nature conservation in their country. You have to be really careful sometimes not to act like a preacher. Instead, you have to listen, learn, reflect, and then consider very, very carefully which instruments are suitable for the entire process. You can't just blunder in.
Every dive has its own attractions and tells a different story. Today, Jan-Henning Steffen is making his first dive ever in the Great Sea Reef in Fiji. The marine biologist is looking for new, sustainable ways to preserve the reef.
The Great Sea Reef
is a very large reef structure. It's the third biggest barrier reef in the world. What's striking is that despite the great diversity of fish, the ones we have seen are small on average. The economically important species in particular are barely reaching reproductive age. That indicates they're being caught or harpooned very young, and that's a clear alarm signal. If it continues like this, the Great Sea Reef will no longer exist in this form in 10 or 15 years.
At the fish market in Suva, Fiji's capital, it's possible to get a glimpse of the scale of the overfishing there. Most of the fish have not been caught by factory ships far out at sea, but by the many small-scale fishermen working close to the coast. Everything ends up at the market for sale or export, even if the species are on the endangered list. Demand determines the supply. The consequences for the reef are catastrophic. If there are not enough fish, the coral also dies and the sensitive ecosystem is upset. Fishermen like Joeli Vaca have to go further and further out to sea to make spearfishing pay.
Why do I do this? Well, I left school when I was 11 years old. I've always lived on the coast. And I don't know any other way to earn a living.
At a meeting with the fishermen, Jan-Henning Steffen shows them a map which marks the old traditional conservation areas. Organizations such as the Worldwide Fund for Nature had drawn in new zones in which fishing was meant to be prohibited. But he's told that the experiment failed because of a lack of monitoring and political support.
The fishermen have bowed to the pressure. The problem is not just being caused by fishermen from outside. In the face of the growing economic pressure in the village, the younger fishermen, in particular, no longer see the sense in respecting these zones.
The production of sugarcane is the second biggest source of income after tourism in Fiji. But the drop in world sugar prices has caused a collapse in production, making it difficult to find alternatives to fishing for people in Mathuwata province. Expanding tourism is one possibility. In the fishing village of Nava Tudua, some women have started growing cultured pearls, a business controlled by a few big global players. Again, it's time for the German conservationists to listen and learn. The women are having difficulties selling their pearls. Far too few tourists venture this far north.
how long would you leave this oyster in? What is the size that you would like to have when it comes out? Is this already a good size for you? To bigger?
That's a bit small.
A bit small, yeah. Okay.
After seeding, we'll put it 40 days in the water.
Okay.
Promoting tourism and safeguarding the reef are ideas that seem barely compatible to diving instructor Salote Sina. She's been diving here for 15 years.
From my point of view, I think more tourists will spoil the reef. As you know, because in some places they don't get addressed for, to take care about what's down there. Many people kick the corals and,
Coral reefs are very complex ecosystems that generally have a high degree of biodiversity, but the species are also closely interlinked. If two important species are missing, that could mean that an entire reef could be transformed from a habitat dominated by coral to one dominated by algae.
To ensure the sustainable protection of the Great Sea Reef, Jan Henning Steffen requires, above all, the fishermen to throw their support behind the idea.
The approach that I and more NGOs are taking is to work with the interest groups concerned and not to fence off the most biologically diverse area to safeguard biodiversity. And I'm hopeful that if the thing is launched properly, that fishermen here will be able to do quite a lot for themselves.